It's not exactly warm, not exactly summertime here in Cardiff. I've put my jacket on because I'm absolutely froze this morning. We're on our second project now, and we're down here. We've got concrete coming. We've got nearly 4 cubes of a lean mix, which we're going to use as a PQC, a paving quality concrete, and that is for this rigid paving system because we're really laying porcelain, and without doubt I think it's the only way forward. There it is, the sub base is in, and we've used this PQC, this pavement quality concrete, and as I explained, it'll maintain its integrity. But one of the things that it'll actually do is that when you're laying this porcelain, it will adhere, the laying bed will adhere to this sub base better than if it was using an MOT type 1. And there are a lot of guys across the country that are putting MOT down, but they're also putting it in wet, which is no good at all. Get on it. Well, this is a sample of the porcelain we're going to be using, and it's called Grigio, I think. The client, when I picked it up, it's like a light grey, so it's going to work perfectly with the brickwork of the house. It's a real good contrast, and if you went for a darker colour here, because all that red, it'll look too dark, and this will lift it and make it look a little lighter. Very contemporary and modern, of course. I think it's going to look the bee's knees. Here we are, Monday morning. As you can see, if you look round here, okay, it's turned into a real site. Now have a look over this side. We've got everything laid out here. We've got a ton of sand, we've got cement, we've got the mix on over there. I'll explain about the mix later, but let's go back over here now. This is what I call the PQC, the pavement quality concrete, all right? It's not a strong mix, but it's ideal for rigid paving systems and laying 20mm porcelain. What we've done this morning as well, we've dry laid the paving out so the client can see it. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the laying shortly. Right, here we are. If you go back a little bit, Luke, so our viewers can see, we have got a manhole here, okay, but I'll be able to show that later. We're not going to pave over that manhole, so don't panic. You guys that are subscribed to the channel, don't think I'm going to do that. So what we've got to do here is we want to avoid as many cuts as possible because it doesn't look good. So what we're going to do, this paving is going to be in a half bond format. So what we want to avoid is having a long strip of cuts over the longest point. So what we're going to do, we've dry laid it from there to create our distance. We're going to measure that and double check that and treble check that, okay? So important that you start off right, okay? Quadruple check it if you need to do that. So what we're going to do is going to half bond, it's going to go from here. So the only place we're going to have cuts initially on this side is going to be just in this corner here. It'll be over two cuts. So that's more or less 2 slabs wide. About these, we'll talk about these later. What we've got here is what we've done. Just if you come a little bit closer, Luke, so the viewers can see what we've done. We've put this CLS timber in to create a void between our sub base and the superstructure being a house. And the reason for that, and I've said this before many times on videos, is that what happens is when it rains, this brickwork gets saturated. Yes, it is a cavity wall, but what we don't want is when the water does run down on those real wet days, you don't see it running down, hitting our paving, and then you have that silt formation all the way along your paving. And the other thing, of course, is that this paving is going to move to some degree anyway, okay? If this house was built on a raft, it really isn't going to go anywhere, but this paving isn't built on a raft. So what we've got to try and do is, if we were to lay the paving tight and we pointed it, you would see airline fractures all the way along, and you would see a silt from all the water that comes down here, okay? And we want to avoid that. So what we really want, if you look at SUDs, which means sustainable urban drainage system, they want the water to go back in the ground rather than putting an eco drainage in there. And also, of course, it creates a void which is ideal for aeration, so you don't get any damp problems, though we're going to be to the low damp. A little tip for you is that before we start laying, is if you look at it, it's all dry. So what we need to do, we need to just make it a little bit damper, and to ensure that the sub base doesn't suck up all the moisture in out of your laying bed, because if it does that, that's when you have that separation from your paving with your sub base. So we put a little bit on there, may do it again in just a while. We are there you are, that's our first cut. If you look at that, you can actually see there's no fragmenting along the edge here, okay? Nothing to the human eye really, so that's our first cut. We're going to get that in now. But it's so important that when you're cutting porcelain, you need to cut as you're going down through the layer. You need to ensure that you're going down parallel all the time, but also at the same time on the outer edges, for example on this edge and that edge, you need to drop down, because what happens is that sometimes with porcelain there's a lot of tension that is created, and it can actually sometimes break, usually on the side where you don't want it to. Okay, you want to be able to cut it once. It needs to be efficient. We've got the slurry on the back now, and the slurry combines of an SBR. You can buy it already made up, you know, a slurry mix, but basically it's SBR and cement, okay? And that's to ensure that your slab adheres to your laying course, okay? There are a lot of guys that have been laying paving for years and they believe that you don't need it, and that's entirely up to them. But, and I have a tendency with that as well, but we're not going to get onto that. But the most important thing, that you do what the manufacturer tells you, do what it says on the can, because you will have no recourse unless you do that. So you can clearly see, and we put this on with a roller. I'll be able to show you after. Okay, what we have here is a 5-to-1 mix, okay, and there is a little bit of SBR again in the mix, and that will stop the moisture, especially on a day like this. It's not too bad today, but when it's hot, it'll just suck up very quickly, so you need to make sure that the SBR will avoid that. So this is a 5-to-1. It's with a sharp sand as well, and what I normally do is, we've got the falls worked out. I'll show you all that later. We're going to put some string lines up, but we need to get that first slab in place, and we probably need to adjust it after. So we've got the cut here, we've got the slurry mix on the back, and what I always do is I always have a bucket of water and a sponge nearby to ensure that none of this slurry gets on the front. Though porcelain is very good for avoiding the stains, you just need to be careful. Work clean. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put this roughly in place now, okay? And you can see we've got the void down the back. Let me just get my tape measure. So we have a 40mm void along here, okay? And a 40mm along here. Now this can be squared up. You just can't go by the bricks. We'll do it overall. We're going to get a line up in a moment. But we've got 40mm there. We have 40mm on this side, okay? So that's good to go. So I'm going to get that in the right position now. We're going to bed it in, and then we're going to run some string lines, and we're going to work to a string line, because on this patio we're going to have a couple of cross falls in different areas. Well, there you are. It's the end of the day. Just giving it the final wash down. And as you can see, the porcelain looks absolutely spot on. It's clinical, it's clean, it's neat, it's precise, and our clients are happy. That's the first part achieved for today, coming down this side, so we'll move on to the next bit now.